How many of you have startups? Wow, okay. So, how many of you have been at it for a year? Okay. 2 years? 3 years? 4 years? Okay, cool. So I was asked to talk about my personal sort of entrepreneurial journey over the past 15 or 20 years, and what insights have I come away with. Now, I'm not a software developer. I'm not a designer. I really, really suck at sales. I'm a horrible marketer. And yet I've started 5 companies. So as I was kind of preparing for this talk, I was like, okay, really, what was it that kind of propelled me to start so many companies? And I think Ara answered it, which is kind of like this paranoid optimism, okay? And as each of you kind of start thinking about starting companies or running your companies, I've kind of distilled it for myself to think, what are the core beliefs that an entrepreneur must have to actually get to the results that they're trying to get to, all right, whatever those results are. By the way, I'm not that altruistic. For instance, like everybody says, oh, you have to have a purpose and you have to have this passion. How many of you know what your passion is? Or how many of you knew what your passion was like 20 years ago? Right? It's kind of I think it's overrated, right? Like, what is your passion, right? And oftentimes, I've kind of struggled with that. I've started companies, 5 companies, each of them in a different area, like completely different area. I already told you I can't code. I am an engineer, but I've never designed anything that actually worked. That's the honest to goodness truth, okay? And I suck at sales, horrible at marketing. You can see it from my slides, because these slides, I made them, not my head of marketing. So where do you think this is, by the way? What? Where? Oh man, that was so good, because we show something like this, and nobody thinks that this is Southern California. I was hiking in Glendale last year, and I was like, wow, this is like heavenly, so I took this picture. So anyway, so what are those key ingredients to entrepreneurial quote-unquote success? And I'll say quote-unquote success because each of your endeavors, whether win, lose, or draw, you are going to achieve certain things. And you're going to be proud of your failures and your successes. Success is not only defined by financial success, it's also defined by how many people did you help? How many people got their first jobs with you? How many interns got the confidence to go after their next gig? So I measure success in multiple ways. And financial success is, of course, one of them. So I've been living with this statement for 20 years, which is every time that I want to start a company or something inspires me, something that I'm curious about inspires me to start a company, I go back to this statement, which is all of the things that are in your head holding you back from starting, called fear. You guys have heard this before, it's false evidence appearing real. Because what is the worst fear? What is the absolute worst fear? Anybody can shout it out? What is the absolute worst fear of a human being? Death, right? That's the absolute worst fear, that you might die. Well, it's kind of evident, right? You are going to die. Every other fear that you have is a version of that fear. So when I was coming out to give this talk, I was like, I don't know anybody here, and actually I do know some people here, but I've never given a talk in Glendale. I've given many, many talks everywhere, but I've never given a talk in my hometown or adopted hometown. And so those fears that hold you back from starting are best to be written down and then analyzed, and logically analyzed, dispassionately analyzed, and then set aside and start anyway. Because whatever that you think in your head that's going to happen with your business will not happen in your business. Other things will happen in your business. Ara Matesian earlier said that every day is a crisis. I think that Phil Knight, the guy that created Nike, said that too, that every day is a crisis. If I told you what happened this morning before me coming here, the 3 things that happened before I came here, you would just say, why is he still in business? So, sorry about this being off the charts. I've actually distilled my entrepreneurial sort of code to one formula, which is S equals C quintupled. Wait, I didn't want to turn that off. So the first C is deeply caring about something. Like, don't start a business or don't start a project because everybody else is doing it. You're the 101st food delivery company. Unless you're like really have an angle that is going to, separate you from everybody else, then do something that you deeply care about. That win, lose, or draw, you want that thing that you care about to come into existence. Without it, you won't sustain. Without it, a year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, you're just going to burn out and give up. Okay? I'll give you an example of the company that I just started 3 years ago called IntelinAir. We started out as a drone company. I actually licensed exclusively technology from University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign to bring NASA level, Air Force level technology down to drone platforms. We don't do that anymore. After about a year of being in that business, even though we built an autopilot, we spent $1.5 million, created a software platform, we went out there and sold to a bunch of universities. We engaged in business development conversations with some of the top drone manufacturers in the world. But after about a year and a half, I had to do a pivot. Now, if you don't care about something deeply enough, which is the existence of this company, the people that you have actually have been crazy enough to follow you, then you would give up. You would say, well, the market fell, DJI is out there, slashing prices every day. That's it. We can't do business. While we were doing that first business model, we also learned that actually the real value is in imaging. It's in imaging and image analysis. People are actually flying drones beyond the entertainment particular aspect of drones. They're actually flying drones to get data so that they can make better decisions, whether it's in farming, whether it's in pipeline inspection, whether it's in disaster response. Like right now, I don't know if you guys are following with what happened in Florida and in Puerto Rico. There's drones flying everywhere because most of those roads are inaccessible. So you must deeply care about why you're starting a company. Second thing is commitment. I often ask, entrepreneurs, like, would you be willing to kind of mortgage your house if you have a house? Would you be willing to kind of get all of your 401k savings if you have savings? Would you be willing to go and get 100 no's from friends and family, your initial sort of set of people that are going to, fund you? Would you be willing to just be told no, 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 no all the time? And can you still keep your spirit up? Can you still be that paranoid optimist that says, you know what, that was 100 doors I knocked, there is 101st door that will open. That's commitment. Every company that I've started, whether they had good exits or bad exits, has come near extinction at least 20 times during its life, including the one that I'm running right now. We're always running like 5-6 months away from running out of cash. Always. One of my first calls this morning is, with an executive that we're trying to recruit, and he's like, how much runway do you have? I'm like, it's immaterial. You either love what we're doing or you don't. And if you need security from me to you, there ain't any. I'm not giving you any security. No company will give you any security. The security is you. The security is that you're going to come then just because you joined IntelinAir, that IntelinAir is going to actually operate at a 10x better than what he was operating before you joined it. As a matter of fact, we never actually hire people that are looking for jobs. We go and recruit the absolute type of characters that we want to join us. So needless to say, that gentleman is not going to join our company. Even if he wants to now, he's not going to join the company because he's asking the wrong questions. You're joining a startup and you're looking for security, you're out of your mind. You are out of your mind if you're joining a startup and you're looking for security. Because that startup, no matter how successful it is, it's got 10, 20, 30 other guys that are in the garage that have seen the early success of the company and are gunning for you. And if you don't have the wherewithal to, my God, 5 minutes? Is that true? Okay, I got 5 minutes. I'm going to rapidly finish this next slide. So commitment is a big deal. Third is competence. If you commit to something, I told you, 5 companies, didn't know anything about them. I mean, I wanted to start them because of other reasons that I only knew and I cared about. Once you commit to something, you actually go and learn a lot. And you get to a level of competency, and then they say, oh, this guy's an expert. You're an expert primarily because you spent more time reading and diving deeper and deeper and deeper in that particular area that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the level of competency. Once you get to the level of competency, then you can get creative about it. It's sort of like the basketball player that gets all the basics done. And then he says, oh, maybe I can like do a turnaround, whatever, and I can dribble this way. I can dribble, between my legs and between the legs of my competitors or whatever. This is the X factor. The X factor of any successful startup is that creativity. Because if you're just reading what everybody else has done, it's sort of like the student that just gets to the level of all the books that he reads or she reads and doesn't go past it. I can tell you that with a very small team of 15 people, we have come up with, in the Integrian company, we had very junior researchers come up with like 14 patents. In this particular company, we're like starting to get our patent engine going. And we only have like 3 world-class researchers that didn't even think about these things. They learned it once we kind of got going into the industry. And the 5th C is community. Why are you doing this? Any company that wants to exist and wants to thrive has to serve a community. The initial community is like all the crazy people that followed you, all the employees, your friends and family, your teachers, your professors, your town. If you're not doing it with the community, there ain't no winning. So ultimately, for me, the measure of success is how many people are benefiting from what we have created. In IntelinAir, we went from a zit on an elephant's ass size company to this season we covered 1.8 million acres of agricultural land. So if you guys are wondering what does IntelinAir do, we fly airplanes with very high level sensors in the belly of the airplane. We capture a lot of imagery, and then we have our own proprietary algorithms that we find all sorts of problems in agricultural land. And that allows us to bring sustainability to agriculture. So you don't have to use as much pesticide, you don't have to use as much fertilizer, you don't have to use as much all these chemicals that we're all worried about. But how is that possible? March of this year, we were 11 people. Now we're about 28 people. That belief that what you're doing is you're doing it for a community. That community could be the globe, it could be your town, it could be your family or whatever, but ultimately something else has to drive you. And these are the 7 leading causes of Startup failure. Pride. I'm always right. Greed. We're doing it for the money. Anger, jealousy, gluttony, lust, laziness. All of these things are what actually kills entrepreneurs. No company goes out of business except when the founder or founders give up. And most of the people that give up, the reason is this. So I don't have any more, but I really want everybody that is thinking about starting a business or is in a business to fundamentally answer that question of why are you doing it? Because once you figure out the why of what you're doing, then the how and all the other people, inspiring other people to join you to get you to your goals becomes much, much easier. But that is fundamental. That's like the ground level of any startup success, that you have to understand that these are things that are going to take a long time. It takes a lot of commitment. And you know what? Nowadays, there's so many resources. There's more money than God has out there as far as venture capital. There's a lot of angel investors everywhere, in every community. And you guys, you're in Southern California. This is the third or the fourth most active startup community in the world. I was just in Brazil, in Cuiabá and in Rio Verde, and the agricultural lands. And they're like, when we talk about entrepreneurship, they're like, what? Because the model there is that they have to go get a job. The model there is that I can start something. Anyway, these are some resources. I'm more than happy to leave it with you guys. Any questions? Go ahead, shout it out. Shout it out if you want. If I were to start another business, what would it be? It's a tough question, because I usually start businesses when I'm very curious about something. Right now, I'm quite curious about what's happening at the intersection of artificial intelligence and healthcare. Now, again, I don't know anything about healthcare either. But what I'm reading, a lot of what I'm reading is about exponential technologies. There's a book called Bold by Peter Diamandis that I highly recommend to everybody to read, which is chronicles. It lists all the exponential technologies that are out there that are driving this massive change in humanity. So I would say that's one. Secondly, I'm a big environmental guy, so I'm into sustainability. I'm into leaving the world a little bit better than we found it. So anything with biologicals and chemicals that allow us to sustainably increase agriculture output without destroying the earth. I mean, human population is growing from 7.1 billion now to 9.5 to 10 billion in 2050. So for those of you that have fears of too many people being in LA, guess what? It's going to be more and more people in LA and everywhere. and then most of this population growth are moving to the cities. So how do we do sustainable transportation? I was very inspired by what was it called? The guy Irby. Yeah, I think that was very cool. So I think that's the other thing. The third thing is just how do you enable people to just start companies themselves? Because that whole model of I'm going to go get a degree, work for a company for 30 years, and then retire, it's just dead. It doesn't exist. So 40% of Americans now are basically mobile workers or free agents. How do you create services for those people? There's so many opportunities, right? The thing is, you should find what is your passion and start that. Other questions?
So you mentioned earlier that one of the most important things about being a startup or a company is you have to have commitment, and that helps you drive your focus and stay course. Now, for somebody who's started, founded, and I think maybe even sold more than 4 or 5 companies you mentioned, how do you stay focused? What makes you pivot and continue to create new companies? And what is your advice for the rest of us who are just barely been trying to get one company going?
I get back to that sort of like, what is your passion? What is it that you absolutely, every night you go to sleep and you go, this thing needs to exist. Once you get started, then the startup takes a life of its own. And as you recruit people, right? As you recruit people, as people join you, they have their ideas. So it becomes additive, right? As far as where you can go. As far as pivots are concerned, I have a love-hate relationship with pivots because, I start companies that I'm very convicted about, right? I'm like, we're going to make this happen, right? And then you see that there's so much evidence, right, that maybe you need to shift. Right? Otherwise, it's just like a suicide march, which is fine too, by the way. I want to do a suicide march, do a suicide march. I don't think advice works, to be honest with you. Like literally, I don't think advice works because you're a different person than I am. I have different motivations than you do. We have different networks from each other. I think fundamentally what scales, two things that I believe absolutely scale in any environment. One, passion. Because you don't care. You don't care what the world says. By the way, every time I've started a company, I started my first company when my daughter was 1 month old. And I had I'm Armenian, so like my mother-in-law, my father-in-law were just on me. Like, what? You have a 1 month old daughter and you go start a company and how are you going to feed? I go, back off. I can handle this. So there's so many people around you. It is a crazy thing, by the way. It is absolutely a crazy thing. So one thing, passion always scales. Second, hard work. I still work 80, 100 hours a week. And you know what? It's not even work, right? It's not even work because you're doing what you love doing and you're doing it with people that you love hanging out with. And win, lose, or draw. Again, win, lose, or draw, that's what you're doing. So I would say kind of watch how much advice you take from people. Make sure that it's your drive, your engine is internal rather than external. Go ahead.
Before I ask a question, can you flip back to your book?
Sure.
So a couple of speakers today have said 99 out of 100. The data doesn't support that. 55% of those companies are still alive 5 years older, 80% of franchises. But there's still...
It depends on if it's venture-backed or if it's a startup, right? Yeah. Venture-backed is like 90. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you should be way more optimistic.
Oh, sure.
But it's still risky. You need to improve the odds. There's great book called What's your advice for improving the odds of a startup?
I think if you're going to do a franchise where there's a model before you and there's some literature out there that you can read and say, okay, this is how they did it, so we can adopt these practices to kind of increase the odds. I think that's one thing. But if you're doing a venture-backed startup, if you're doing something from scratch and like it doesn't exist and you're really trying to, the science is just coming, the science is not even mature, right? I mean, we have, out of the 28 people, we have 11 PhDs. Even the 11 PhDs that work for our company don't agree with each other where the science is. But we brute force it. We do it, right? So I would say the odds are back to what I said, passion and hard work. I mean, I've had to do 180s on my own, sort of thesis, if you will, I was 100% sure that this was right. And then you go meet 100 customers, and they tell you, you're out of your mind. I'm not going to pay you anything for that. And then you're like, no, really, we should listen to our customers. So hard work comes where you're just going customer after customer after customer, where you're just kind of learning. So you're co-creating the product or the service with customers in mind and with other humans in mind. Maybe not your customers, but in the ecosystem. Other questions? All right, I think I'm done. All right, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.